Hi guys, we're just going to go through some potential questions for this year's exam and look at what the previous sort of 12 mark questions were and sort of see if we can make any deductions of what questions might be in this exam. Now obviously I don't know what questions are on this year's exam. I died right at the end last time, didn't I? Because the bear punched me to death. So there's my stuff. So I've gone through all the previous released exams. Oh, there's my t-shirt. And I've tried to I've written down the questions. We'll go through the questions. And then we might be able to use it to eliminate some possible answers. I mean, obviously, this isn't the best plan anyone's ever had, because I could tell you, oh, I don't think this question will come up, and the exam board could make a decision to literally repeat a question from last year's exam. Bear. Fully don't trust you anymore. Betrayed. Stabbed in the back. Talking about Jesus. There's my Judas, the bear. Very disappointed. I am going to need some more wood to make some more signs. I've only got one little bit of axe left. Right, let's go and make another axe. So firstly, there have been 5 on the AQA website. There's 5 sets of exams that they publish. So I'm only going back to this 5 that they've got on their website, because I think they're the most likely ones that we can use as reference points. Why do I think that? Because they're the ones I think they expect teachers will have used as mock materials and practice materials, and therefore we might be able to see some patterns in questions that aren't coming up. Have I got any more wood or axes? No. Did I have any more metal? I could make more metal. I had metal. No, I don't. I thought, oh, yeah, isn't that metal? I had metal there. So, for example, for Christian beliefs, if we go to the 2020 paper, now you're thinking, hang on, there wasn't a 2020 paper. There was COVID and therefore we had tags. There was a November 2020 paper for people who weren't, oh, not 2020. There's a November paper. Let me have a look at the date on the paper, actually. I have it here. So it was, May 2020. Why is it a May 2020? Surely that would have been the COVID year. I'm very confused now. Anyway, there's a 2020 paper listed on their website that I've put in there as well. Even though there wasn't an official 2020 exam, there was tags. There is a paper on the website, so I've taken that one as well. So, 2020, the question for Christian beliefs was... axe. Excellent. Right, that's exactly what I wanted, to go and get some more trees. The question was a resurrection question. Now, you're thinking, first of all, a resurrection question. That question must have been about the resurrection of Jesus. It was more vague than that. I'm going to talk about that in a second, why I think that's important. It was more vague than that, in that they just said, and the question was, the resurrection of the dead is the most important Christian belief. So, what does that tell us? Well, that question could be about Jesus. A person answering that question could definitely ask it about Jesus. But you could be talking about the afterlife. You're proper stuck, aren't you, mate? I can trade with you. Oh, you want all these things I don't have. That looks like a bucket of pufferfish. Mate, I don't know what you're about. You freak me out. I don't like you. I felt bad that I killed your friends. Didn't feel that bad. But come on now. Ridiculous. A bucket of pufferfish. So the question could equally be about, oh, here's some more wood and sticks and stuff. Excellent. That's what I need to make more signs. The question could equally be about afterlife, because many Christians believe that resurrection is an essential part. Oh, that was the old axe. Phew. There's my new axe for chopping down trees. Many Christians believe that afterlife is an essential, resurrection is an essential part of going to heaven. What do I mean by that? That means that they believe that you don't go immediately to heaven, but that you must be resurrected first. It's similar in the ways, if you're doing the Muslim paper, that Muslims believe in Akira, that they believe one day... oh, hello sheep. That they will die and on the day of judgment be resurrected. Many Christians have the same belief about the afterlife, that there will be a day of resurrection or a judgment day, the world will end and people will be resurrected. So that question was about resurrection in 2 forms. Now this is interesting for a number of reasons. Jump and place, I like that move. I'm going to chop that one down. One, it gives us the suggestion from the one COVID paper we have, May 2020, okay, the 2020 paper, that I believe I really think people sat that in a November for some reason. they put a really open-ended question. What I mean by that is that question is a lot broader than many of the GCSE questions, because the 2019 question was God cannot be loving because people suffer. That is more specific. A person has to talk about sort of God being omnibenevolent and God being omnipotent and the inconsistent triad. What is that noise? Thought that was in the game. That is a man on a motorcycle outside my house. That is not a thing that should be affecting you. Hopefully you can't hear that. Bear in the pit, gone. So, do you know what I might... Oh. Ow. Always broke my ankles coming in here. Make a lot of boxes. And I'm going to make one of these crafting thingies and put it in this corner here. Oh, I've buried it. And that seems fine. And then I'm going to make a lot more signs in here. Then I can just create the signs where I need them most. So, there's a lot of signs going up. Practice questions. So, 2020, we had a question on resurrection. Okay. 2019, which was the last year of like proper exams, as in not COVID influence anyway. Okay. We had a lesson about God and suffering. Okay. 2018, which is listed on the website as well. Okay. Loving God again, okay? Loving God and hell. That's fascinating, okay? Now, if we go to the first of the specimen papers, the practice papers they put out there, what's the question on that? God and loving, okay? If God were loving, there would be no suffering in the world. So we've got 3 questions available on their website about God being loving and people suffering, okay? That, to me, suggests it won't come up again. Obviously, they could do it again, but I think that's a lot of papers they've got about God suffering there, okay? I think that's a lot. It would just be a prediction that's not coming up again. So, let's have... We chill? Okay. There's another one over there, but me and him seem chill. So, we could have a question on creation, okay? Creation could come up. There was a question. There is one creation question, and that is in one of the specimen papers. So it's not been actually officially released as a year. And that question is, and I'll pop it up here just so we can see it on the screen. The Bible tells Christians all they need to know about creation. Okay, I think it actually says about God's creation. Now, is it the sun going to go down? Nah. So, to me, this suggests that I think creation could come up as a 12 marker, but maybe they would save that for the themes question, because they have got religion and life issues to do, and they can ask about creation in that as well. So, I'm a little bit dubious it will be creation, but they do have precedent for doing this. They do have a reputation to this. They've taken a question that has been on the specimen papers before, and then converted it into an actual question. We see that with the if God were loving, there'd be no suffering in the world. And then in 2018 and 2019, oh, I've just changed my microphone slightly. I hope that hasn't affected anything too badly. Let me just check that's still working. Yeah, it still seems to be working. I'm getting used to this whole setty-uppy thing. So we could have that. What else could we have questions about? Well, I mean, if I had to have rabbits, not bears. If I had a gut instinct, I would be thinking crucifixion. That's personally where my brain is. I'm thinking ascension or crucifixion, okay? These are the things that I'm smelling, okay? You could have down here anything about the Trinity. Definitely could see a Trinity question coming, okay? So we could have a Trinity question about, which part of the Trinity is most important in some way. Definitely could see that coming up as well. Okay, and you would have to argue, the Father is most important. And we went over that if you look at the live stream video earlier. I did a bit of talking about that, and that's in this corner here. Ow, ankle's broken again. The Trinity, the Father, Son, the Holy Spirit. The Father being omnipotent, the Son being omnibenevolent, the Holy Spirit being omnipresent. And how these 3 things, you could argue which one's most important. And I did some practice questions about this one on a previous video. So you definitely could see a Trinity question. But I could really also see it being a question about crucifixion. And I could really see it being one like... So if we think of the one from 2020, says the resurrection of the dead is the most important Christian belief. I could see it being the crucifixion is the most important part of Jesus' life, because I think that gives you I don't think it's not an easy question. That's a fair question, okay? Because I would do that one. I would set it out as, obviously you're going to talk about crucifixion, okay? And crucifixion, I'm going to say why that's so important, and I'm going to link that to forgiveness and reconciliation. Okay, they're the two topics I'm going to link it to, okay? So I'm going to link it to forgiveness and reconciliation. And then my counter-arguments, if I'm arguing which is the most important part of Jesus' life, if you know it, go incarnation. But incarnation isn't something that is officially on this year's exam. They say not to spec, but if you know it, incarnation, that Jesus came to earth as God in human form, it's his birth, so without that bit, nothing else happens. I guess you can say that's a simple answer. The Word became flesh and dwelt amongst us. But I could then go resurrection, okay, miracle proves afterlife exists, okay, so that's proof of the afterlife, and then ascension proves that Jesus is 100% God, okay. Also with ascension, he gives his final message, which is, where is it? He was taken up to heaven, therefore go and make disciples of many nations. So you could say, it influences Christians because they must go and make disciples of many nations. They must go and spread their religion, okay? So that's how I'd probably do that question, okay? I'd compare it to that. Now, once again, I would take the coward's way out on a conclusion on this one, because I think it's an easy conclusion. It gives you a new topic to talk about. I would say there should be no thought that one aspect of Jesus' life is more important than the other. Jesus' life is there to teach Christians a message, and every aspect of his life should be treated with equal importance. All of it can teach Christians how to be a good, rounded person and get themselves into the kingdom of heaven. Blah, 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 blah. I mean, you're going to flesh it out a little bit, but that's roughly what I would go for with that sort of one. I hope that's sort of a useful one. That's what I'm thinking. I could see that crucifixion. Now, the question doesn't have to be about crucifixion, okay? The question could be, the ascension is the most important part of Jesus' life, and you'd basically do the same answer, but you would just swap out. You'd do two reasons why ascension is important. Ascension is important because Jesus goes up to heaven and proves that he is God. He's at the right hand of the Father. It shows that him and God are one and the same. Proves Jesus' divinity. Otherwise, how do we know that Jesus is truly worthy of worship? I have no food to eat, and I keep hurting my ankles and therefore need more food. Need to think. So he was taken up into heaven, and Jesus, during the ascension, gave a final message, therefore go and make disciples of many nations. This is important because it shows that we should spread the faith. Church growth, grow the church. They love hearing about church growth. So that's definitely something that could come up, okay? I could really see that coming up, but you just talk about ascension, and then you bring in why crucifixion is more important and resurrection is more important. So those are questions I could really see coming up. I'm going to try and go quickly. How much time have I spent already? Does it say somewhere on my little thing? I don't know. Yes, 13 minutes. Perfect. Doing really well. Not whittering on too much. I do need to tidy this place up at some point. When the exam's over, I'll tidy up. So on Monday, you've only got 2 days left. So, 2020 paper on the website. So one that a lot of schools will have used for revision. The question is about Christmas, okay? Christmas is the most important Christian celebration. And don't forget, just because I don't think these questions will be a 12 marker, they might bust that in as a 5 marker or a 4 marker. So they might ask for 5 marks, explain 2 reasons why Christmas is an important... it's very late. Explain 2 reasons how Christmas influences Christians, or explain 2 Christian teachings about Christmas. Anything they can say about Christmas. So it could come as a 5 marker or a 4 marker. I'd be surprised if they did festivals again for a 12 marker. Just rub my finger all over my glasses. Because they asked it so recently. But it could happen, okay? Compare the festivals. Christmas is more important. Easter's more important. Overall, all festivals are equally important, is how I'd go. Now, 2019 question was, the Lord's Prayer is the only prayer that Christians need to use. Tough question. Luckily, it cannot come up again because prayer isn't officially on the 2022 syllabus. It's one of the things that the exam board cut off and said won't be examined on. You can mention prayer as part of a 12-mark answer, but you don't need to know it, okay? 2018, infant baptism is not as important as believers' baptism. I think that's almost a shame that came up so recently, because I don't think that's a bad question. I'd quite like that to be the question, okay? And then you've got the spec papers. The best way for a Christian to reach understanding of God is by practicing prayer, and then private worship has more meaning for Christians than public worship. that really limits down what can come up, because those two topics are prayer again, basically, and public worship, not going to come up. So what have we got left? Well, we have some pickle of a topic. It could be baptism. But and there's no pilgrimage on the paper anymore, so that's a topic off there as well. I've got some real fears about it being evangelism. And evangelism is a bigger one because people just sometimes don't remember that word, okay? Evangelism, okay? And if it could be about evangelism, the other phrase they could use is about church growth, okay? Church growth, growing and increasing the size of the church, okay? And the question could be something as simple as growing the church is the most important Christian, I spelled that wrong, duty. Okay, it could be something like that. I know I spelled Christian wrong and I'm sorry. It's just I want to get this done in a hurry. I've run out of signs again. Need to go make more signs. So you would argue why growing the church is both an important Christian duty and why something else is more important. Why I think that could be a good functional question is because if we look back at these old questions, they do like a question where you can sort of bring in other topics. That does happen quite a lot, okay? So the best way for Christians to reach an understanding of God is by practicing prayer. That question lets you bring in other topics. But sometimes they do a more limited question, like infant baptism is not as important as believer's baptism. The Lord's Prayer is the only prayer that Christians need to use. So I've just got a feeling after all I really think that could come up as a question. Don't know why, it's niggling at me. So, how would I answer that? Well, growing the church is the most important Christian duty. I would say yes, because on Jesus' ascension, he gave the Grand Commission, and he said, therefore go and make disciples of many nations. He said, go and convert people, basically. Go and make people more Christian. Go on missions. Go and evangelize. Spread the faith. This must be important because Jesus commanded it. And it was sort of the final commandment he gave while he was on earth. Therefore, it must have been an important thing for him to say. That's a strong argument for me. What's another argument? You could just go for a very simple one. Jesus' message is one of peace and love, and if more people were to follow this message, the world would be a more peaceful, loving place. Do I truly believe that down in my heart? No, I do not. But is it a good argument for an RE exam? Yes, it is, okay? And you can say, oh, a weakness of this argument is, okay? A weakness of this argument is Christian nations have declared war on each other in the past, okay? And you could talk, a certain World War I would be an example of that. And therefore it doesn't just promote peace and harmony. There have been Christian groups who are not nice to each other and stuff like that. So there are lots of things you can say about that, but don't get bogged down with that. Quickly throw it out and say church growth. And if it does say growing the church is the most important Christian duty, then you can suddenly say what other Christian duties are there, okay? Baptism, okay, being a more important duty, and then you can link that because baptism not only welcomes someone to church but grows the church as well. You can bring that in there. You could even talk about baptism just as generally as part of church growth, but then you could talk about the more important one being, I need to go and make more signs. Reconciliation, atonement, okay, making up for our sins, doing what we can to make ourselves better people. You could say those are more important duties. I mean, you could say something as simple as like worshipping at Christmas is a more important Christian duty. I think it's a tough argument to make, but I think there's stuff you can say about it. Like I'll be like, because it brings a community together. I mean, it's a constant thing you can say that it brings us closer to God. But you can mention prayer in there, even though prayer's not officially on the spec this year. You can drop prayer in there as a topic and say, prayer can come up. And there's one more Christian practices question I do want to go over, but as the sun is just going down, I'm going to stare and see if I see any goblins come out. No. I think the quicker I go to bed, the less goblin attacks I get. Straight to bed. Is sacraments. Now, sacraments is a difficult thing, okay? I need a whole new building to write on here. Right, I need to find my bucket at some point so I can throw some more water around. Right, let's jump over this water. Water's so awkward. Snowing again. Right. So it could be like baptism is the most important sacrament. Okay. Now, that is it's not a naughty question because actually I don't think it's that difficult, okay? But throwing in the word sacrament in there and the word baptism, I think it's quite mean, especially if you're someone who struggles with memorising all the different keywords. I think that is a mean thing to do in some ways. And and exam boards can be mean, so I think it could come up. It's different enough from the 2018 baptism question that I think they could do it as well, because the 2018 baptism question was specifically comparing believers' baptism and infant baptism. Sorry, my eyes are shutting because it's so late now. Whereas I think this one you're comparing baptism to other things. So you could compare baptism on one side and why it's important, welcoming people in the church, washing away sins, giving people a chance to get into heaven, making them grow up a Christian, bringing them closer to God, okay, thing you can say about so many different topics, to the other sacraments, okay. What are the other sacraments, okay? Well, we've got confirmation, marriage, ordination, those are the ones and reconciliation. These are the ones I would compare it to in the easiest sense, the ones I do the more direct comparison to. So baptism being more important than confirmation. Would I even do confirmation? I probably wouldn't, because it's so similar to baptism. I think you're going to get yourself stuck in the weeds there. I would definitely think, oh my God, I've done that again. I would definitely consider comparing it to marriage. I think marriage is an easy one. And for most people, I think on the themes paper, the schools will do theme A. I think theme A is one of the easier themes. So if you're at a school where they're doing theme A, you should know enough about marriage and why Christians get married. And so you can drop that knowledge in there and say, oh, marriage is important. It bonds two people in the eyes of God. It allows them to have children and grow the religion, as Christians aren't allowed to have sex and children without marriage. So therefore, marriage must be the most important sacrament. Yes, you seem clever. You've taken a topic that isn't technically on the exam and sort of put it on the exam, so to speak, okay? Ordination is joining the church as a priest or a vicar. That is important because priests and vicars have a central role within the church in converting people to the faith. You could even put down for that, or you could put in taking part in the sacraments. The sacraments cannot happen without a priest or a vicar leading them, so therefore ordination must be the most important sacrament, otherwise none of the other sacraments can take place. Clever thing to say. Reconciliation I'm putting in there. Now, reconciliation as a sacrament normally means taking part in confession, okay? Taking part in confession. That means going into the confessional booth and confessing your sins and reconciling with God, making sure your relationship is repaired with God. Where have I put my phone? Just realised have I lost it. Is it on the floor? No, that's my phone charger. That's worrying. Anyway, I'll find it later. So reconciliation is about repairing your relationship with God. Why is that important? Well, you can say, well, that's what humans did with God when Jesus died on the cross. That was the ultimate reconciliation, okay? Why is that important? Well, that meant Christians were able to get into heaven. So we should reconcile our relationship with God by confessing to our sins, okay? The other one, and I'm going to give it its own sort of board, is, because it's got so many names for it, Eucharist / communion / mass / these aren't slashes, these are commas, Lord's Supper. Okay, this is taking the bread and wine at church. We've not really talked about it because, once again, officially it's not on the spec as far as we're concerned, but you can bring it up as one of the sacraments, okay? So it means they're probably not going to ask a question about it directly, but the fact that they left the sacraments on the spec but took off Eucharist is fascinating to me, because that's one of the important ones, okay? That's a massive part of them. So they've taken off Eucharist but left on the sacraments. That makes me think they want you to learn it in some way, because it's still on there technically. So I wonder if they want you to learn it in a more basic way, and they won't ask a question directly about it, but will ask a question where you can use that knowledge. Therefore, if I'm the exam board, I'm thinking, well, those students who knew the whole course, they've had an advantage, and that's good for them. But those students who didn't learn the whole course because they had a much more mixed time with COVID at their school was shut more, they still got a fair shot. I wonder if the exam board will think like that. I don't know how they're thinking. So they could ask a sacraments question, and you could then bring in the Eucharist, Communion and Mass as your other one and go, oh, the most important part of the sacraments is performing Eucharist, which is what's called Communion, or Mass. I normally call it Communion personally, okay? But Mass, or the Lord's Supper, it's where Christians take the bread and the wine, and then you just want to talk about how they are remembering Jesus at that moment, bringing them closer to God. They're reenacting a moment from Jesus' life and doing as Jesus directly commanded them to, okay? This is all important, okay? By having his bread and having his blood, having his bread and blood, having his body and having his blood. They are having Jesus within them. Now, you probably don't need to go into the detail for a 12-mark question about, like, Catholics believe that it's this and other Christians believe it's that, because don't forget to answer the question. If the question is baptism most important sacrament, I could just see that coming up, okay? Once again, I could be completely wrong, okay? There is nothing to suggest that I'm not going to be completely wrong. I've been completely wrong about many things in my life, okay? So, I mean, my church looks ridiculous, all these signs on it now. But that's absolutely fine. Do you need to find more food at some point? We still chill? Yeah? What about you over there? Are we alright? Okay. Look, you've killed me once. Does that mean we're settled? I do still really like you and respect you. Respect everything you stand for. So, Islam. And now I'm going to do Islam. And I know some people who joined in the live stream earlier were asking me about Buddhism. And someone else has asked me about Sikhism. I'm sorry I can't do every single religion. I did start this channel originally just for the students who I teach. And it's lovely that other people are getting sort of advice and help from it. I would hate to start throwing out guesses for an exam. I don't prepare for myself. Maybe one day I could start to prepare for those other exams as well. But time-wise, I've got a job and a 2-year-old. It's not feasible. So previous questions, okay? This is about Muslim beliefs. Have I got time? Let me just check how long I've been doing this. 26 minutes, perfect. This should be one of my shorter ones if I get on with it, okay? For Muslims, this life is more important than life after death. That was the 2020 question. I think that's a bit of a mean one, but there's lots to say, but I think I could see that throwing people off, being like, what on earth are they talking about? Basically, should we be concerned about this life or the life after death? Your arguments being, this life is more important because you should be living. We don't need to worry about it because it shouldn't come up again directly, but you should be living a good life in order to please God, not just for the reward. We should be doing the right things for the right reason, okay? And trusting in God. Predestination suggests God has a plan for us, and we shouldn't worry about whether we're going to heaven and hell, but just fulfilling our duty to God. We trust in God, Bismillah. God wills it. Whatever God wills will be. We cannot control that, so be a good person, don't worry about the rest of it. But 2 years ago, 2019 paper, belief in angels is no longer relevant for Muslims in the modern world. I mean, that was a horrible question because the exam board started accepting things like, some Muslims don't believe in angels. You're like, what? That's an abstract sort of thing to suggest in the beliefs paper that they don't have the beliefs, but fine. The Quran is the only authority a Muslim needs in life. 2018 paper. So those two questions are really about the sources of authority. Are angels a good source of authority? Is the Quran a good source of authority? Now, we have to go back all the way to a specimen paper. For Muslims, Adam is a more important prophet than Ibrahim, to find a question about prophets, okay? That fascinates me. And to describe God as omnipotent is the best way to understand God. That's a very vague spec question from when the specs were released. The prophets question fascinates me. I could really see it being a prophets question. Now, we've got more of our beliefs, I think, down this end. There's angels. I could really see it being a prophets question. And for Muslims, Adam is a more important prophet than Ibrahim. I could see it being a question like Muhammad is the most important prophet. Okay, I can see something being not. I think they'll phrase it more difficult in a more difficult manner. More difficultly. That is not the way I'd want to phrase that. I think they'll phrase it in a more awkward manner. I think it'll be something like, for Muslims, Muhammad is the most important source of authority, or is the only source of authority. They might phrase it like the Quran question from 2018. So the Quran is the only authority a Muslim needs in life. It could be something along the lines of, Muhammad is the only source of authority a Muslim needs in life. Okay, it's a good question if you're ready for it. Okay, so how would you answer that? Well, my method of answering it, the way I've taught my students, would be you're going to have 2 times Muhammad paragraphs, okay? So you're going to have 2 times Muhammad paragraphs. You're going to have an Ibrahim and an Adam. That's how I would do it, okay? That's if the question says specifically about his most important prophet. If he says that the Muhammad is the most important source of authority, then you can start comparing Muhammad to things that aren't people. I would probably take out those guys then, and I might put in the Quran. And if I'm being risky, I might even do the imamate, okay? And start going to Shia Islam. You can start comparing to other things. Your 2 Muhammad paragraphs. This feels like nighttime. This feels like nighttime. Let's get back to bed. So your 2 Muhammad paragraphs are going to be along the line of, well, why is Muhammad so important? Well, oh, my house is... I mean, I like the fact I have to occasionally dig my driveway out. It does really make me feel this is a more realistic game than it does snow and I do get stuck. What was I saying? My Muhammad paragraphs. I'm going to go for 1, the Quran, okay? That he received the Quran and delivered the Quran. This is important because God trusted him in the Quran. The Quran is the word of Allah, delivered through the angels to Muhammad. It cannot be translated or changed, so therefore it can be trusted from the start of time till now. Okay, I'm going to go into that sort of those ideas and talk about why that makes Muhammad so important, because that shows Muhammad's duty was to bring the Quran. And therefore it's trusted. But then you could say, however, a weakness of this argument is that Muhammad's duty has been fulfilled and the Quran is now on earth. So Muhammad is not the source of authority, but the Quran is the source of authority. Muhammad was just a human being, whereas the Quran is the word of God. And as it has not been changed, we can trust it forever. Bang, that's quite nice. If that was to come up in that way, I'd quite enjoy that. If the question once again said Muhammad is the best source of authority, you can't compare it to the Quran. If it says Muhammad is the most important prophet, then you have to compare him to other prophets. The other thing is that you can talk about Muhammad being the seal of the prophets, okay? So I've got that quote written down here. Yeah, there it is. Let me dig a little bit of a trench so I can just read these properly. Okay, look, where is it? Yeah, he is God's messenger and the seal of the prophet. So he's God's messenger, he brings God's message. That's the bit I'm going to use. I could even split that quote into 2, cheekily sort of use it twice in the paper. You know, many examiners aren't going to criticise that. You're using the quote in 2 different ways in 2 different paragraphs, okay? He is God's messenger. This is important because he delivered the message from God. That message became the blah, 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 blah. You're going to go into details, do your points of evidence, explain whatever your school teaches as that method, okay? Every school seems to have some sort of fun little acronym for it, okay? PEE, PEEL, you know, JYZ, QQQ. I'm making those last 2 up, but you understand what I mean. Schools do different things. And you could then do another quote later on and say he's the seal of the prophets. Why is that important? It shows that he had the final message, and therefore his message is the most important one because it cannot be changed or questioned by anyone else. Blah, 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 blah. And if it was about the source of authorities question, then you could compare that to the imamate and go, however, Shia Muslims believe that the imamate are a great source of authority. They were able to lead their religion and show people how to lead a good life, even though they came after Muhammad, who was the source, who was the seal of the prophets. How important are the imamate to Shia Muslims? Well, in the Shahada, they say, and Ali is a friend of Allah. Okay, they add him to the Shahada to show how important Ali is as a leader of the faith. Okay, and a blood relative of Muhammad. Bang, you've got your 2. So that would be your 2 times Muhammad question point. Then the Quran is most important, the unchanged word of God. The imamate are most important, it's human leadership, the blood of Muhammad, and Ali is the friend of Allah. Shia Muslims believe that. How would I do a conclusion for this one? Muhammad is the most important prophet, or, you know, alternatively, Muhammad is the best source of authority, which is actually more what I've talked about there. I would be saying, I mean, I'm probably going to take the coward's way out again. I feel bad saying it. But I'm probably going to say, oh, Muhammad is the best source of authority. No, I'm not going to say that. Coward's way out. I'm going to say they're all equal. I'm going to go, oh, in Islam there are many sources of authority that should be equally respected because they each have a role in showing a Muslim how to live a good life. And then I'm probably, if I've done the imamate, I'm probably going to drop in that I understand that for Sunni Muslims, the role of the imamate would not be considered important because it's not one of their key beliefs. And that would be how I sort of end my sort of like conclusion, going like, oh, whereas Sunni Muslims might have a belief that Muhammad is the most important, Shia Muslims might consider that Muhammad is not the best source of authority, but he must be considered alongside the imamate. And this is because they put Ali's name into the Shahada. Not necessarily saying that I think, I think most Muslims would not compare things once again like top trumps as they sort of try to an exam, you know, just direct comparisons, or which one do we believe in more? Then that's a very abstract sort of thing, and religious people wouldn't have this conversation quite so clinically, but we're talking about passing the exam, not doing our degrees in this. Muhammad is the most important prophet, so you're then going to compare Muhammad, okay, so I'm going to have 2 times Muhammad paragraphs. Now, once again, someone in the live stream said their school says do one big paragraph, perfectly acceptable method. But you're going to have at least 2 points in there to fill out these 2 paragraphs. So the method I teach my students is 4 against conclusion, okay? That's great, okay? What you're essentially doing is you're going 4 against conclusion, but pairing those 2 sections up to make 3 paragraphs. In fact, it's very similar to the way that Shia Muslims pair up 2 of the prayers to make 5 prayers into 3 prayers, if you are Sunni Muslims. That's a bizarre bit of coincidence there. So you're going to need 2 points about Muhammad, even if you don't need 2 paragraphs about Muhammad. Then you're going to have a paragraph about Ibrahim, and then one about Adam, okay? Let's do Adam correct, okay? And then your conch there, or your my opinion at the end. So your 2 Muhammad paragraphs, same as we had before, okay? He brings the Quran, he's the seed of the Prophet. You could also say what a great example he is. He lives his life in a way that shows Muslims how to lead. He is honest and peaceful and all those sort of things. He's a good military leader, these sort of things. Then you can say, oh, Adam is the most important prophet because he's the first person on earth. Without him, no one exists. Easy argument, okay? Your easy argument. Oh, why else is he important? Well, God shows him how to farm and how to name all the objects. Where is it? This one here. He taught Adam all the names. This suggests that Adam was given the fundamental information about how the world works by God. He was given his role as a Khalifa, which is a steward, okay? Why is Ibrahim the most important prophet? Ibrahim is the most important prophet because he promoted the belief in the oneness of God, which is a fundamental Muslim belief, as it says it in the Shahada, which is a statement all Muslims believe in. And this is something that Ibrahim promoted. And also it shows Muslims, why is it important? Because it shows Muslims they must trust in God, because Ibrahim was willing to sacrifice his son for Muhammad. And this leads to the festival. It's so important, it leads to the festival of Eid al-Adha, okay? Absolutely perfect, okay? So you're going to drop in why Ibrahim is so important and give your evidence. Well, look, he must be so important because the festival of Eid is all about the life of Ibrahim, okay? The Hajj, many events of the Hajj are remembering the actions of Ibrahim and his family, okay? That is a nice, easy thing to say. Oh my God, I need more signs ready. Did you two make a baby? Look at you, the guilty look you're giving each other. What were you up to as I turned my back? Can I stroke the baby? There you go. Alright. Oh, they left you out, did they? Lonely. You're just watching them? Disgusting. Right. So. Hey, my thing got buried. Right. I really need to sort out a floor for this place. And probably a roof. Soul campfire. Campfire. Wow, okay. I also want a campfire. What, is that just coal in the middle, do I think? I think it might be. Okay, so coal and sticks. I could probably make that at some point. Don't get distracted. Sign. What do I need for my sign? More sticks. Right. Sticks. More signs. Right. Final question. Final question that I think might be coming up. Muslim practices. Muslim practices. Where's the sun in the sky? Okay, not too bad, not too bad. Going to be on the horizon at some point. But doable. Snowballs. So, Muslim practices. So this is our practices section down here. What questions came up before? Okay, 2020. For Muslims, the best way to serve Allah is by giving charity. A shame. Charity is still on the exam. Zakat is still on the exam. But that makes me think it won't come up directly as a question again, which is a shame. I don't think it's that bad a question, okay? The Shahada is the most important pillar of Islam. Can't come up, that question. 2019 question cannot come up. The Shahada is the most important pillar of Islam. Can't come up because officially they've taken the Shahada off there, which is a pain because I think the Shahada is a relatively simple one. But Shahada is the most important pillar of Islam, so we can't have that. The Friday Jummah prayer is more important than daily prayers. Whew, that could come up. That is a tough one, but they did ask it in 2018, so I don't think they'd ask about Jummah prayers again. They could ask about Jummah prayers in the 4 or 5 marker. Don't forget, Jummah prayers are Friday prayers where Muslims gather together to pray. Why is that important? Because, where's the quote? Bow down with those who bow down, and bow down your heads with those who bow down. The Quran tells Muslims to pray together. Once again, brings the community together and brings you close to God, is the other thing you're going to say. I'm just going to drink some water. Love it. So watery. It's my favourite, okay. Then we've got from the spec papers, completing the Hajj is the most important duty for a Muslim, and the best way for Muslims to understand God is to practice Salah, okay. So, we've got a question about Hajj and a question about Salah on those ones. Things that have never come up as a question. festivals. That would be a difficult question. What question could it be about festivals? I mean, they could go as simple as Eid al-Adha is the most important Muslim festival. Do I hate that question? I don't hate it, but I can think of easier questions and questions that lend themselves more to sort of longer sort of answers. So, I mean, let's think, if it was a question like Eid al-Adha is the most important question, you're going to do one thing about Eid al-Adha, you're going to do two things about Eid al-Adha, so that's twice. Then you're going to have to do Eid al-Fitr for one, and Ashura for one. So that would be my sort of, I want to look at that a bit more closely. Where's my, oh yeah, no, I did it wrong. No, not seeds, I don't need seeds. Stupid man. Hang on, where's the sun? Going down. Right, let's go and have a quick nap. Oh, I should get a bed in there. How do I make a bed? I made a bed before when I was on my squid adventure. Wool and wood, which does mean I need to kill sheep. Unless, and if someone knows how to do it, please put in the chat how I can get the sheep off the wool off the sheep without killing it. There must be a shaver. What weapon would be a shaver? The hoe? Hoe the sheep? Could work. Next time I see a sheep, I'm going to hoe it. Doesn't sound like a thing I should say. Sounded silly. But I'm going to hit it with a hoe and see if that helps. I still don't have any food, but I'm just going to have to do this revision and then starve to death later. You're going to talk about Eid al-Adha, then talk about Eid al-Fitr. Why we're going to talk about Eid? And once again, the question doesn't have to be about Eid al-Adha. The question could be Eid al-Fitr is the most important festival. I just think they'll go with Eid al-Adha for some reason, if I'm my first guess, but I have no evidence for that. That's just a guess. These are all just guesses. Please don't think these will come up. These are just nice ideas to have. And if you plan for these questions and one does come up, perfect. But if it doesn't, like, hopefully you revised other stuff as well, and the structures still come up, and maybe one of my counter arguments can be one of your arguments as well. If I've got it completely wrong, I'm sorry, but you know, this is just me trying to help and not promising it will help. So I'd say Eid al-Adha is important because it's remembering the sacrifices that Ibrahim was willing to make. Okay, so I'm going to use the same sort of ideas I talked about the Prophet Ibrahim over here. Okay, so I'm going to say, it remembers sacrifices that Ibrahim was willing to make, and that everyone should be willing to do whatever they can to please God. You're also going to say for Eid al-Adha, it is a day when they sacrifice animals to make sure everyone is fed, and this goes in with he, where is it? He who eats while his brother goes hungry is not one of us, okay? Why is that important? Because that shows that all Muslims are united as one, brings the Muslim community together, and is an act of charity. Now, you could also say that for Eid al-Fitr, because Eid al-Fitr is when Muslims traditionally pay their zakah, but you're not going to necessarily, unless you're being very clever and going, witness's argument is that they also do this at Eid al-Fitr, bang, and this quote applies there. That would be quite a nice little transition if you can pull that manoeuvre off. But you'd be saying, Eid al-Fitr is important, it brings people together, it's a time for fresh starts, as it's celebrating the completion of Sawm during Ramadan, and it's a time when Muslims remember how fortunate they are. During this time they go to mosque and stuff like that, but you're not going to go into too much detail because it's not a 4 or 5 marker. You're making the argument that it's the most important festival. Why is it the most important festival? Well, I'm probably going to go for like the idea that it shows appreciation for what God has given you, okay? And then Ashura. Don't forget, Ashura is celebrated in 2 different ways. You've got Shia Muslims who are celebrating it, remembering the sacrifice of Hussein. You've got some Muslims who are using that as a moment of self-flagellation, the cutting of the heads, which is something that is actually done by very few people worldwide, but is quite well known because it is so like easy to sort of photograph and remember. You're like, bang, that's more interesting than other Muslims just sort of praying peacefully, which is what the majority of people will be doing, but we don't want to remember that because that's not as exciting. So you're going to say, Ashura is more important because it is a time when Shia Muslims remember Hussein, and Sunni Muslims use it as a time of remembrance for Moses and the people of the floods of Noah, and a time of quiet repentance. This is important because it's important to remember the history of religion. Which would I argue in a conclusion is the most important festival? I mean, I would probably just go with the one that's in the question and go Eid al-Adha. I overall think Eid al-Adha is the most important because it is a time to remember Ibrahim, and Ibrahim's willing to make their sacrifice is the most important idea for me. You know, I'd probably do that. I once again, you could take the coward's way out and say all festivals should be equally important. It's whatever you feel brings you personally closer to Allah. Not a bad little line there to show, look, I know what this is about. I know why all these festivals are happening. okay? So that could be a question coming up about festivals, okay? Another question that could be coming up, we could have jihad on jihad, okay? Lesser versus greater. This is interesting, okay? Jihad, as far as I'm aware, is still on the spec. You could have a question directly asking you to compare the jihads and say why the lesser jihad is more important or why the greater jihad is more important. If there is a strength of this question for you, the person doing it, it's a pretty easy conclusion, in my opinion, to argue that the greater jihad is more important. One, it's called the greater jihad. That's not a coincidence. Muhammad literally calls it the greater jihad. He makes it clear to his Muslim followers that this is the bigger struggle. He says the lesser jihad is now over, the greater jihad now begins. This is the idea that the struggle that Muslims are going through on a day-to-day basis to do the right thing is the most important thing. However, there's arguments to mean that the lesser jihad is more important. It's about defending the faith, willing to sacrifice your life for God, showing that you're willing to do whatever it takes to protect your religion, okay, to keep your religion safe. So you can say the lesser jihad is more important, okay, but your conclusion should pretty clearly be that the greater jihad is important. I just think it's an easier argument. So jihad on jihad, I don't hate that. I don't hate that question at all, because it's got two very distinct sides. As long as you remember there's a lesser jihad and a greater jihad, that is fine. It could also be jihad versus everything. And what I mean by that is, the question could be, the jihad is the most important Muslim belief, or Muslim practice, or Muslim duty, I think they'd say. I'm slightly less convinced that would come up, because they often like to split jihad down into greater and lesser, because they are so dramatically different. I think if they just blanketly said jihad is the most important, I think people would get a little bit kicked off and go, well, which jihad do you mean? You'd have too many sort of very bright kids being like, well, the jihads are so different. I've now got to compare all the jihads to all the 5 pillars, and you've made my life very difficult there, and you could get people in a mess. So I think if they do a jihad question, they could just do lesser versus greater. Once again, that question is not impossible by any stretch of imagination. I never trust the exam board to do what I predict because they're unpredictable, but I personally, I wouldn't predict that to be the question, but it could be. And finally, the other question that could come up, okay, and I want to get in the right sort of places with it, okay, is 5 pillar comparison, okay? Well, actually, there's a few others. 5 pillar comparison is one that can always come up, okay? They've done it in 2019 when they said the Shahada is the most important pillar of Islam. Now, the fact they've taken out 2 of the 5 pillars, I don't know if they can suddenly go, Salah, prayer, is the most important pillar of Islam. Because if they've told you don't have to have learnt Shahada and Sawm, which is the 2 they've taken out, can they ask a question about the 5 pillars if they remove the 2 of the 5 pillars? I don't know. I'm not sure if they're going to do that. But it would be surprising if there was nothing about the 5 pillars in there. Maybe 5 pillars is going to turn up as the 4 and 5 mark question, and they'll be like, oh, explain 2 Muslim teachings about Salah, and you'll be like, oh, one teaching is while Muslims pray, they perform a wash beforehand called wudu. This is to make sure that they are pure and clean before they interact with God. This influences Muslims to always be respectful in their interactions with God. Another Muslim teaching about prayer is that they are separated between men and women as they pray. This is so Muslims do not become distracted while they're praying, and that means they can focus on God, and distinguishes the different roles that men and women have within Muslim society. Bang, okay? So that could be the 4 or 5 marker about that, and in which case they could ask something specific about Salah, okay? Specific Salah 12 marker. I mean, this Islam practices are starting to panic me the more I'm thinking about it now. They could be like, the most important part of prayer is wudu. I mean, they could do that. All those terms are in there. And you would then compare wudu to, say, the rak'ah, the positions. I mean, that is a very tough question, because especially if once again, your memory isn't the best, you've got a lot of technical terms to remember, okay? Oh, the wash is the most important bit because it's making you clean with Allah. Oh no, bowing your head is the most important bit because you're showing ultimate respect to Allah, showing that He is so high above you. It's about all the way to the floor. Oh no, like what did I say before? The separating men and women is the most important aspect because it allows you to concentrate on your prayers. I mean, these are all arguments. it's going to be interesting to see if they do that. I think that would be, once again, a very hard question. And the other one, and I keep coming back to this, okay? Zaka versus Coombs. I mean, they could do this, okay? They could say Zaka is the most important form of charity, okay? And then you'd have to argue that... I've run out of things again. Right, actually, I'm going to take this one down because I can throw another thing in there. Zaka, Coombs, Sadaka. So, they could throw this one in there and they go, oh, Zaka is the most important form of charity, or Zaka is the best way to give alms, okay? Give alms is the way they'll often say give money to charity. Alms, A-L-M-S, okay? So you'd argue, oh, yeah, Zaka it's the duty all Muslims have as a part of the 5 pillars, give 2.5% of your profits to charity. This amount shows that all Muslims are willing to take part, but you don't have to give if you cannot afford to. This means that everyone is able to give it and is one of the largest days of charity. Coombs only applies to Shia Muslims, however it's a higher amount, 10%. This shows it's more important, and it goes to the imams and the leaders of the religion in order to protect the faith. That's a nice sort of point to make. Sadaqah is the most important because it's a charity that you do outside of zakah. This allows people to do good deeds even when they're not being asked to, and a good deed that is not requested could be considered to be a stronger deed. However, zakah is paid at the end of Sawm, and good deeds done during this time are multiplied. So zakah and completing your zakah is considered a good deed and helping you get into the kingdom of heaven. I would probably not take the coward's way out on this one, and I would probably argue that zakat is the most important of the 5 pillars because of the charity forms, because all Muslims make this donation. Okay, now I'm going to take one of these down just quickly, and I'm going to risk being seen by them. And there could even be, I was just thinking that, a Hajj question where they ask you to compare parts of the Hajj. They ask you to compare, say, going to Muzdalifa to throwing the stones at the pillars of Mina. They could say, walking around the Kaaba at Tawaf is the most important part of Hajj. Once again, a mean question because they're asking some very specific Muslim knowledge there, but never doubt an exam board to be mean. Like, being mean, they're not against being mean, they're not trying to be nice, they're just trying to set you an exam. That's their point. So, I mean, it could definitely happen. I don't know why I'm just doing this now. I need to go and sleep in my bed. For people who go to Horizon and in my classes, there'll be a Teams meeting at 6 tomorrow where we'll do one final revision session, and I will try and put I'll try and do another couple of videos tomorrow with just some more tips for those people who are just following along. I'm hoping these have helped you in your revision for your exams. Good luck on Monday again. I know I keep saying it. Any questions about the exams, please throw into the comments. I do read all of them, and I will try and answer them in whatever video I make next and get done. And then once this exam's done, I will be doing videos on themes as well, and I might actually try and just do a video where I actually do some work on that church because I've not done anything on it. Okay guys, good luck, and I'll see you soon.